Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, today, I want to discuss jobs and how you're valued by your employer. Or if you are an employer, how you value your employees. Because for a long time, it has felt like the employer has held all the cards. You should feel grateful for having that job. And when that dreaded yearly appraisal comes round and you could be left feeling a little unwanted, useless, or even taken for granted. But hey, you are lucky to have that job, so book your ideas up. But times have changed since then. More and more people are questioning why they should be making money for somebody else, and they also want greater flexibility within their own work life. The tables have been turned, and employers are lucky to have their employees that want to stick around, not the other way around. So when I came across a recent study from West Monroe Partners that showed that despite the tightening labour market that should be making companies sweat about how to convince their skilled workers to stay on board, most of those surveyed ranked employee engagement towards the bottom when asked about their company's top 10 priorities. And it didn't even make the cut for 10% of the respondents, which is quite alarming. So what's it going to take for companies to realise that they can't take their top talent for granted, or indeed any of their employees? Because in a competitive labour market like this, the employee experience is arguably the new customer experience. It's time for companies to figure that one out. I think it's a great story, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to San Francisco so we can speak with Paul Hagen from West Monroe Partners, who's going to tell us more about this report and what it means for both businesses and their employees. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, so I'm Paul Hagen. I'm a senior principal in West Monroe's customer experience practice. In a nutshell, I help companies treat people better. Customer experience is largely about people's perceptions of their interactions with a company. And oftentimes companies are built from the inside out. They're built based on things that they need to do, and often it's to customers and to employees and not necessarily for them. So we try to take an outside-in perspective from a customer experience perspective and help companies adapt their operations to meet what customers actually want to do and literally treat them better. In order for them to be able to do that, they've got to treat their employees better and improve employee experiences. So we often turn our human-centered design focus on employee experience as well as customer experience.
So when I think of West Monroe Partners, I instantly think of you guys of having a bit of a reputation for partnering with companies to help them reimagine, build and transform their businesses with technology. But can you just set the scene and tell listeners hearing about you guys for the very first time precisely what it is that you do and how you leverage technology for businesses?
Yeah, the reality is technology is changing everything that we do. Websites came along and then mobile came along. Now we've got chat-based interfaces. All of those things can make interactions easier for customers to get value out of them. Sometimes can change the nature of the value that they're delivered as software has gone from a license-based software to software as a service. There's all sorts of data that companies can gather about what customers are doing and help them actually achieve their success. Cars will be self-driving pretty soon and autonomous, and that's going to change the nature of what people do getting from point A to point B. So as all of these technologies change, we're essentially helping companies reimagine what is the value proposition to your customers. How can you use technology to make life easier and deliver more value? So that's essentially what we're doing is helping companies navigate, all of those waters. And sometimes that's overall in the products, and sometimes that's internally through the processes.
Now, there is an increased competition for tech-skilled talent out there, especially in areas such as blockchain or AI. They immediately spring to mind. But because of this, I assume that companies would be doing everything they can to improve that employee experience and keep them happy. Now, you hinted a few moments ago that they weren't doing that. And when I recently read your report, it does tell a very different story. So can you tell me a little about the story behind that report and what you learned?
Yeah, so we've known for a while that there's an intersection between the employee experience, employee engagement, and customer experience or customer engagement. And so we thought, let's go dive in and find out how companies are doing. And you're absolutely right. There's a tremendous competition for talent, particularly in certain areas. But more broadly, there's a competition for customers out there, and getting your employees aligned and engaged around this epic battle for customers in a world where customers have so much choice and ability to switch is easier. We really wanted to find out how are companies doing in terms of engaging those employees, designing great experiences for those employees, and enabling them to really help customers and serve them. And what we found was, pretty disappointing. Employee experience and engagement were things that were clearly in companies' top 10 list, but it was the lower half of that, as opposed to anything else. And I think often what happens is companies chase the shiny objects, chase things like AI because everyone's got to have it, and now we've got to have it, and forget that technology still requires people. And if you've got a horrible recruiting process, and your employees internally are not advocates for the company, then why does someone want to come work with you versus someone else?
So I'm curious, is there anything that really surprised you when you compiled this report?
I think one thing that surprised me was just how low companies prioritize the employee experience. And I just would have thought with as much attention that's out there, and there's been sort of this. I get that customer experience is important, but that without treating your employees well, you can't. It's hard to get there. I guess I would have imagined companies were better at that. I think the other thing that was intriguing to me, as we were researching the paper, there's almost two sides of this debate. There is clearly a group of people who are interested in replacing people. So AI or robotics process automation is often seen as a way of reducing your workforce, replacing them with these robots. There's another group of people who are very interested in making machines work for people. It's almost the opposite of artificial intelligence. It's intelligence augmentation. Not quite as sexy of a term, but it's. I think of Iron Man, right? Iron Man, was a human at the core, and then there were robotics and intelligence all around him that made him a superhero. So it's that kind of thing. It's, are the computers going to take over, or are the humans going to take over with the assistance of technology? And that was probably one of the more interesting things. We landed clearly on the human side and said, this is about human-centered design. Let's make, machines work better for humans as opposed to forcing humans to try to work around, machines.
I think much of what you said there, a lot of people listening will be able to resonate with. And I've witnessed some of it firsthand as well, because it seems that every business now is heavily reliant on technology, but many of them take it for granted. And when something goes wrong, everyone starts shouting and playing the blame game. But I mean, it's not just about the tech. What's it going to take for companies to realise that they can't take their top talent for granted too?
Yeah, I think they start losing the game, right? Yeah. And to me, one of the interesting things that we came out with is it's not always just about top talent, and I think about sports teams. Sports teams, you always are recruiting top talent too. But there's another game that some play, which is how do you take the talent that you've got and make them perform well? And that was interesting to me is, at some point, utilities are going to have a harder time recruiting, some of this specialized talent, relative to, say the social media tools or, maybe a more sexy retailer or something like that. So the question is, hey, if you're in one of these places where it's harder to recruit, how do you do the other things that, help your team, the underdogs, you perform at a higher level, use technology. And to me, there's so many of these things that are design issues that if you actually pay attention to them, don't cost anything more. A recruiting journey, for example, doesn't necessarily take a lot more time and energy to create something good than to create something that just you hadn't thought about before. I always tell companies it's, because a lot of companies say, oh, do we have to provide, free food in the cafeteria and, free dry cleaning and, all of the other foosball and all of those types of things. Not necessarily about giving everyone everything they want, but giving them the basics that they expect. So if I'm coming into a company that's got a brand promise around, taking care of someone, I expect to be taken care of in the recruiting process. So, I think so much of this is just people don't pay attention to it. And if they intentionally designed experiences and tapped into, some simple behavioral economics, people like to be recognized for work. They like to be able to be put into a position that they can succeed. There's a lot of behavioral science around what makes people happy and motivates them that, again, is not embedded into, everyday experience design. And those are the things where I think companies can make, leaps and bounds improvements.
Now, this year I have attended numerous conferences where the biggest names in tech are all talking about the same thing, experiences. But it's not just B2C experiences. I mean, do you think employee experiences is, in many ways, the new customer experience?
I don't know if it's the new customer experience, but I certainly see a pivot going on. So First of all, as you were going down the B2C route, I was thinking to myself, okay, we're going on, does this apply to B2B companies as well? And I'll say absolutely. The business to business is probably represents at least half or more of our business. I was just talking to one of the big enterprise feedback listening tools, and their fastest growing segment is B2B. But within either B2B or B2C, ultimately, if you haven't engaged your employees, if they don't really like working for you and they're frustrated, I mean, think about every day we're employees at our companies, and you're using a conferencing tool, or you're trying to use your online collaboration system. I was actually just fighting with our own internal HR system. Right. I mean, those things just get in the way of spending time and energy on, doing things that benefit customers. So, if they're not engaged, if they're not enabled, you can't ever win this game. So I think absolutely employee experience is gaining in attention. I don't know that it's a pivot from customer experience, but I think it's an addition to, and I think companies that focus on it and prioritize it, put it up there as important as customer experience, actually will help win the customer experience game and the battle for customers.
I'm glad you mentioned the B2C and B2B experiences there, because they all just seem to be turning into one now, and it's just people to people, especially when millennials and Gen Z are bringing their expectations into the workplace and thinking, well, why can't we have this same expectations in a B2B environment? Are you noticing that those worlds are just morphing into one now?
Absolutely. I mean, again, when an employee has better tools at home, with the tasks that they're doing, then they come to work and you've got antiquated tools, right? I mean, that makes a difference. And I think everywhere there are so many more out. This has been going on for a while. Is individuals, humans have outlets to share their frustration, and those frustrations can be shared through work boards or Glassdoor or other social sites where people are LinkedIn, where people are looking for jobs and so forth. So I feel like people's voices are getting amplified and others are listening to those. People listen to each other and social media reviews much more than they listen to direct marketing, or recruiting verbiage. So, I think reputation means a lot, and reputation is driven by people's perceptions of you as a company. And so it's a consumerization of, B2B relationships. It's a consumerization of the employee relationship. I think there's some, whether it's things like fair wages, diversity and inclusion, the Me Too movement. I think all of these things are having a big impact. It's not just technology. It's a broader. People's voices want to be heard, and there's when you get enough people who are feeling victimized by technology, victimized by unfair practices, those things are going to are going to surface themselves. And that's what I think what we're seeing is that broad consumerization of this entire space.
So do you have any other examples of how you guys are actually helping businesses begin to move employee engagement up their list of priorities?
Yeah, well, there's a few ways. I mean, first and foremost, it's just starting to put your finger on the pulse. You asked me about surprises in the reports, and I didn't think about this one, but as soon as I talk about it, it popped right up there. Is companies, by and large, don't even have our finger on the pulse of how customers feel.
Yeah.
So, by and large, a majority of the companies, it was well over 50%, only survey their employees once a year or less. Many companies only it's once every 2 years, and so they effectively are flying blind. They don't know how their employees feel about them. That needs to change, and that's one way we start helping people is just, hey, you got to put your finger on the pulse. Ask people about the core things that they do in every day. And whether it's easy for them to do or not. Are they frustrated with it? Are the tools they have effective? So it's asking those questions and then just saying, hey, how are you feeling? Would you recommend us? It could be there are lots and lots of employee engagement types of surveys that get to the heart of how well engaged people are. There are employee net promoter scores. Would you recommend the company to others? But it starts with listening to employees. I think that's with all of the human side of things, it's listening to them. But it can't stop there. The second thing that we do is turn that listening, that ongoing listening, not just once a year, but constantly keeping your finger on the pulse, into action. How do you govern now? I'm learning some things. I'm going to do some root cause and some analysis, looking at behavior, not just what they say, but what they do. And that taking that data, finding root causes, and then driving it into, continuous improvement action plans. And so we do a lot of that type of work. Sometimes it's, some of those things result in technology. We need a better collaboration system. And so sometimes we're building collaboration systems, but we don't just implement something like a SharePoint or a Microsoft 360. I can't tell you the number of companies that just implement it and say, okay, we're done. No, it's a human-centered design process, right? So there's a tremendous number of tools and things like Microsoft 360, but if you don't design how people are going to use it and understand exactly what of the thousands of different tools and something like Teams, the team sites will do, you'll lose your employees. So we take a human-centered design process to implementing stuff that will be useful, effective, and easy to use, and even hopefully enjoyable. We've won some, one of the folks that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, the Nielsen Norman Group. Don Norman was probably one of my gurus when I first entered the space of human-centered design. But we won a design award for some of our internet work based on some of the key tenets that those guys have preached forever.
So outside of the report, is there anything else that you can share with us about tech trends or how you're helping leaders reimagine, build and transform their businesses all through technology?
Well, so whenever I get asked to talk about the future of technology, I both get excited and I get scared. Yeah. I think technology has always enamored me, and I've always been intrigued by how we do things better or how might we do things differently. But it's a cautionary tale. I've been around long enough to see just wreckages and alongside the road of technology gone bad or not hitting its promise. And to me, it all comes down to who am I trying to serve, and will a technology help me to serve them better or not? Whether again that's employees or customers or third-party partners. I think technology will enable you to deliver new value to people, but if you don't take that human-centered design lens, then it's all for naught. When I get asked about, will virtual or augmented reality, be the next hot thing? Will blockchain be the next hot thing? At the end of the day, I don't know. What I do know is those are interesting technologies to experiment with and to apply human-centered design process to. So again, when I'm out there giving advice to folks, the biggest advice I'd give is don't get bedazzled by the shiny objects that are out there. Look at them with a critical eye and use a human-centered lens to look at them. Understand what the technology can do and bring your technology partners in to help understand what the technology can do. And then really understand whether it's going to be useful or not useful for your customers, or whether it is just a shiny object. Because if it's just a shiny object, it will come and go and fade just like the next one. But where it's useful and where you've actually adapted the technology to help someone out, that's where companies will succeed.
Fantastic advice. I've seen that all too many times. Sometimes people would choose the shiny object without even a problem and then find a problem for that shiny object to fix.
Absolutely. I mean, the number of times you see that is pretty incredible. Both in the business to business and business to consumer space. I laughed one time many years ago. CRM was getting popular just as websites were, and there was something called the Comet Cursor. You could turn your cursor into anything, and they were calling themselves a CRM tool. And I thought to myself, do I really want Mickey Mouse as a cursor? Is this helping me with my job? So everything becomes the Comet Cursor now. When I see a shiny object for shiny object's sake, it's the Comet Cursor.
I love it. Well, a huge thank you for coming on and talking with me today. Before I do let you go, just in case we do have any business leaders listening today that you've really excited with your talk, can you remind the listeners of where they can find you online and also contact a member of your team if they've got any questions at all?
Yeah, we're at westmonroepartners.com or more easily wmp.com. And always feel free to reach out to me, P. Hagen, Hagen, at westmonroewmp.com.
Well, it seems that everywhere I look at the moment, everyone's talking about the customer experience and personalised experience. But I'm so glad I've spoken with you today, because we've actually brought up something that's even more important, and that's the employee experience and keeping that tech talent. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing that story. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Neil.
There seems to be a real disconnect here. On one hand, most of the experienced professionals rank employee engagement towards the bottom of the list, and when asked about their company's top 10 priorities, it didn't even make the cut for 10% of respondents. But when you couple that with the fact that only 7% of companies bother to ask for employee feedback in real time. But what's their excuse? Because we're living in a world of an accelerating rate of change in processes and technology to make things more efficient and faster. But it seems that companies just haven't got the memo that skilled workers are becoming few and far between. And these are just a few reasons why they better up their employee engagement game to retain the talent that they've got. But hey, what are your thoughts on everything that you've heard today? I want to hear from both employers and employees, because I want to hear both sides of the argument and ultimately look for a better solution forward. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, and if you go to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, go to podcasts, you'll find a nice big red button where you can record me a voicemail. I'm quite excited what you will say about this one, so I'm looking forward to all those messages coming in, but until then, I will return tomorrow and we'll do it all again. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.